could Cork be independent? This is a seemingly ridiculous question with a surprising and not so ridiculous answer. To see why, we first need to understand how centralised Ireland is. This graph shows the percentage of government spending at lower levels of government across the 37 Western countries of the OECD, and at 10.2%, Ireland's is the second lowest, ahead of only Greece. At the other end, we find countries like Switzerland, Denmark and Canada, all of whom spend over 60% of their budgets through lower levels of government. The University of Lausanne's Local Autonomy Index is a qualitative study that compares local autonomy in Europe across 7 legal and political measures. Out of the 57 countries measured in the most recent index, Ireland finished dead last. One of the star pupils of localism in Europe is Denmark, which spends 66% of its national budget at regional and municipal level, more than 6 times that of Ireland. Denmark is a useful comparison due to its similarly sized population, EU membership, and like Ireland, Denmark is a unitary state, which means that the national government holds ultimate authority over lower levels of government. The 5 Danish regions receive a block grant from central government and are in turn responsible for deploying these funds across key areas such as health, social welfare, housing, and energy generation. The second, but perhaps the most famous example of localism in Europe is the Alpine Federation of Switzerland. Unlike the 26 counties of the Irish state, the 26 Swiss cantons possess powers that are more akin to nation-states than counties. Each canton sets its tax rates and carries out its own tax collection, while handling most functions including social housing, childcare and social welfare. The Irish state, in contrast, is extremely top-heavy, with the bulk of state spending and functions residing at the national level and run by powerful government departments and agencies. Ireland's centralising trend has been going on for decades, as seen in the replacement of the regional health boards by the HSE, the dissolution of town councils, the takeover of Cork Airport by the Dublin Airport Authority, and the increasing dominance of national agencies like Irish Water and On Board Pleanála at the expense of local authorities. Ironically, given the Cork-based premise of this video, the biggest blow to local government arguably came in 1977 from a Cork Taoiseach. The Jack Lynch government's decision to abolish domestic rates removed the council's main source of local income, reducing them to branch offices of central government rather than truly autonomous agents of local government.
It's not that local government in Ireland was brilliant prior to 77, it was just in a better situation in terms of income streams and the autonomy of the income stream. So what you began to see after 77 was local government, even though it's quite a weak local government, still needs money, so the money comes from the centre rather than being recouped locally.
What is the rationale for centralism? The reasons most commonly cited are Ireland is a small country. Centralising functions in Dublin makes sense. Centralism cuts out waste and duplication and allows for faster action in the event of a crisis. Centralism makes government less prone to corruption and mismanagement, as there's more scrutiny of central government than local government, and national politics attracts higher calibre candidates. These are all common and understandable reasons, but it is the humble opinion of this channel that Ireland's slow drift to centralism has been a mistake. Firstly, when it comes to efficiency and waste, centralising functions can lead to more inefficiency and waste, not less. To use an analogy from computer science, a single-threaded process handles one task at a time in sequence, whereas a multi-threaded process can handle multiple tasks concurrently, and the Irish state is one giant single-threaded process. Taking healthcare as an example, the HSE's budget has been growing rapidly in recent years, without an obvious improvement in performance. Numerous attempts at reform have been tried and failed. The organisation seems hesitant to change, with its CEO describing it as a very centralised, very top-heavy organisation. Another example of single-threaded government is the planning appeals body, On Board Pleanála, whose backlog is delaying the construction of 22,000 homes, as well as commercial projects, such as the redevelopment of Pennies in Patrick Street. The population of Cork is now 580,000, and Munster's is approaching 1.4 million. It is not beyond the people of Cork to come up with a rational set of local planning policies, with a regional appeals body. A common concern with the localisation of land management is that it would create a haven for so-called NIMBY objections. This needn't be so. County and regional referenda could be used to decide rules on who gets to object to what, and on what grounds, and national government could incentivise pro-development policies with central funding. Such referenda would serve to bring planning issues out into the open for proper debate, which is not the case currently. Right now, local development plans are ostensibly democratic, but in reality, very few people engage with the consultation processes that inform these plans, and those that do are more likely to be existing landowners. The centralist temptation is always to take land use away from the local authorities and into central government, such as the 2017 SHD scheme, which allowed developers to bypass the councils and go directly to An Bord Pleanála, but this invariably backfires when planning is transferred from the councils to the courts by way of judicial reviews, which are slower, more expensive, and less able to reach local compromises. Another advantage of localism is its division of labour and responsibility. Having one minister for the whole country puts untold strain and unrealistic expectations on a single individual. And being a politician today is by all accounts brutal. The stress, the abuse, social media scrutiny, the strain on family life. 70-hour work weeks are common. You can't please everyone. It's like being a football referee but with a lot more teams on the pitch. Right now, the weakness of local government pulls TDs into issues such as potholes and individual planning cases that should be left to the councils. In Ireland and across the West, there are signs that the strains of political life have made it increasingly difficult to retain and attract good people into politics, especially women. This isn't good news, as love them or loathe them, we need politicians. Immigration is one issue around which the national debate has become increasingly toxic. Whatever level of government this function sits at, it should be consistent with housing policy, as the two are connected for obvious reasons. In our view, giving local government more of a say over non-EU immigration, as Switzerland does, would drain some of the poison out of the national debate. Local governments are able to use facts on the ground to shape local policies on housing and integration, and ensure that the right balance is struck between humanitarian compassion and local considerations. When it comes to building new housing, including social housing, in our view, the biggest case for localism is the scope that it provides for policy experimentation and learning by doing. In previous videos, we explored ideas such as street plans and transit-oriented development. Such ideas would be hard to enact in our highly centralised state, in which policymakers are risk-averse, and agreement must be obtained nationally before trying anything locally. A more localised state would move us away from rigid top-down planning towards bottom-up experimentation, and policy diversity would yield useful data for empirical studies. To borrow another technology term, localism is a more agile form of government than centralism, and technology would be crucial when localising, to ensure that central bureaucracy isn't merely replaced by local bureaucracies. But would localism really work in Ireland? It's this channel's view that Ireland is the ideal candidate for localism. Since the state is so centralised at present, and through our sporting allegiances, Irish people identify more strongly with our counties and provinces than in most countries, giving local government a sense of legitimacy.
I love me county, you know.
You had the sporting organisation looking to make itself more coherent and to cohere more appropriately locally. And it followed the local government boundaries that were devised in the 98 legislation. If you want to sort of empower local government and you want local buy-in and you want legitimacy, democratic legitimacy, you're probably best staying with what's going to give you the greatest amount of local loyalty and buy-in. And that means sticking with the local county. It might be the most efficient or might be the most effective, but it's probably the best thing to do.
Indeed, the GAA is organised in precisely such a bottom-up fashion, with political agency flowing upwards from club to county to provincial and national level. As for Northern Ireland, a more localised southern state would bring an interesting dimension to conversations about a new or shared Ireland, and likely present a less threatening proposition to some northern stakeholders than a monolithic southern state. As for what powers should sit at which level of government, rather than emulating Denmark or Switzerland, it is best to approach such issues from first principles, taking Ireland's unique characteristics into account. Under the principle of subsidiarity, the correct place for a function to reside is at the most local level possible. For example, issues like parking and pub opening hours should be handled at a municipal level, rural roads and water at county level, major roads, third level education and hospitals at regional level, and defence, foreign affairs and corporation tax at national level. On local authority governance, whether it's an assembly of councillors, a strong CEO or a directly elected mayor, These are questions that we'll address in a subsequent video. So, back to where we started, Cork independence. While a full Kexit might be a step too far, it makes sense to give more autonomy to Cork, Munster and other parts of the country in order to encourage innovation and a bit of friendly competition, which is as important in politics as it is in sport. All the idea needs now is a few rebels.